So I want to start um, by talking a little bit about Generation Study Abroad, who is one of the organizations, along with the Department of State, that is hosting us today. Generation Study Abroad is looking to double the number of students who study abroad by the end of the decade. And in order to reach that goal, we need to help everyone find programs and get students in touch with funding opportunities so that we all have access to the various opportunities out there. So first of all, there's sort of a myth going around on many campuses out there, I know, talking about study abroad and how much it costs. Many students feel that study abroad is too expensive and thus don't consider studying abroad or don't even begin to look into the opportunities. And I want to break that myth today and give you all a good idea of the resources out there so that you can find funding for your study abroad experience. This cost of study abroad, it really depends a lot on what country you're going to, how long you're going for, the credits, all of that can factor into how much it costs in the end. So those are all things that you should be looking at. But I think your first step as you begin to explore the idea of studying abroad, hold on a second, I don't know what just happened, is to look at the resources that you have around you. So the first place you really want to start on your journey to a program abroad is your study abroad office if you have one at your institution. Study abroad offices not only can help you go through the programs that are available for you, that are available to you on your campus, but they also should be very knowledgeable about the costs of the various programs. Most study abroad offices produce budgets for all of their programs that should give you a good understanding of how much any one program is going to cost. Those costs are going to include things like how much the tuition for the program is, how much you're going to need to live, so that would be room and board, how much a plane ticket is going to cost in order to get there, and any other fees that might be applicable. Things like visas, you might need a visa in order to study in the country that you'd like to go to. You might also need to get insurance, you might need immunizations. All of these things should be available in your study abroad office because they put together budgets on this. So it's a really good place to start and get an idea of sort of what programs are available to you and how much those various programs are going to cost. The second place that you'll want to visit on your campus, if you haven't already, is your financial aid office or student accounts office. This is because the way study abroad is funded at different universities works very differently, and you'll need to understand how it works on your campus. A lot of times, many of the costs of study abroad can be your financial aid funds can be used to fund your study abroad. And if that's the case, then you'll want to meet with your financial aid advisor and talk to them about the new budget, how much it's going to cost, and how your financial aid is going to be affected by your time abroad. Usually, in cases like this, the study abroad office and the financial aid office work in tandem to help you understand how the costs of your study abroad are going to affect your financial aid. So it's very important to go and meet with this person on your campus and talk to them about place you might want to visit is your fellowships office. The fellowships office is usually a place on campus that is responsible for helping students find awards. Oftentimes they are awards that are after graduation, but they can't, but they also have information about um, things like awards that are available for study abroad or summer or opportunities like that. So it's another great resource on your campus where there might be folks there that can help you sort of look for funding and things like that. Other people on your campus that you should be aware of and you should be talking to because they also might know a lot about what kinds of funds are available would be your academic advisor. Academic advisors often work in tandem with other offices like the financial aid office, the study abroad office, and the fellowships office to help students get what they need to get done in their 4 years on campus. And certainly study abroad would be part of this. So they are often really well connected with these other offices and can help you sort of navigate how all of these things work on your campus and let you know also sometimes there might be awards available or funds available through the university directly that might be applicable to your study abroad, and your academic advisor or dean is likely to be in connection or know about those kinds of awards. So it's another great resource. You will likely be talking to this person as you begin to think about where you're going to go and what kinds of classes you're going to take, but you might not think about them in terms of funding, and that's a mistake. Really, they might know a lot of different ways or different scholarships and things that you might be able to tap into. I can see my question box is going off, and I see that there are questions coming in, but what I'm going to do is so that we sort of have a smooth presentation, I'm going to go through the presentation, and then at the end I'll go and look at all the questions, and hopefully I'll be able to answer everybody's questions. The last place on campus that you really should look at are the different academic departments that might be relevant to your study abroad. That's because a lot of academic departments also have funding and scholarships available to help students with projects and things like study abroad. So for example, if you are planning on going to France and you are looking for funding, it's a possibility, not a surety, but a possibility that the folks in the French department might know of funding that's available to help students who plan on going to that country. So think about your study abroad and what offices on campus might have funding or might know about funding that would be applicable to you. So if you're going to be studying Middle Eastern studies, perhaps in the Middle East, you might want to tap into the resources of the Arabic department on your campus, or perhaps you have a Middle Eastern studies campus department on your campus. Those would be also great places to go ahead and look at and see if maybe they either have funding of their own or perhaps have ideas about places that you can find funding related to that subject area. So when I talk to students and advise them about starting their study abroad, looking at programs, and considering how to start looking at scholarships, it's important to look at your campus and see what people on your campus are available to you and might have the information that you need to fund your experience. And all of these offices I've mentioned, plus many more, I'm sure, are places that you can look at. Or if they don't know, they might be able to point you in the direction of someone who does. So really consider starting with your campus and looking at what resources are available there. Once you've done that, perhaps you've looked at your study abroad office and you started to look at programs and things like that. and you understand how financial aid works. I mean, I think that's a very important part of understanding how you're going to fund your experience abroad, is to understand how your funds and any outside scholarships, maybe you're getting scholarships to go to a four-year institution. Well, how is your study abroad going to... That's all information that would be available in the financial aid office. So once you've gotten a good grasp of that, I think the next thing is to start looking at outside funding. So start researching what other funds outside your campus might be available. And there are a lot of really great websites and resources to start doing that you really should know about. The first one I can think of is studyabroadfunding.org. This is a very big database through IIE of different funding opportunities, and you can go to studyabroadfunding.org and type in what country you're planning on studying in, or what language you're hoping to study, or perhaps you're looking for funding for a summer program or what have you, and it should give you a list of different funding opportunities that might be available to you. So that's a really great aggregate website that you can use to sort of pare down your study abroad funding possibilities. There are a lot of other ones out there you should be aware of too. I mean, study abroad funding is a very big one, but for example, Mobility International, if you're somebody who has any kind of mobility issues or disability, Mobility International USA can hook you up with funds that are specifically for students with those kinds of issues. Sometimes students with those kinds of issues might have, it might cost more to go abroad depending on what sort of support services you need while you're abroad. And Mobility International is a great resource to start looking into to figure out what might be available to you, what funding might be available to you, and even how much it might cost. That's a really great resource. The Fund for Education has a number of funding opportunities that are available. Again, a website you might want to head to and start looking at to see if any of the scholarships there are applicable to you. Diversity Abroad is another great website that is specifically for non-traditional students studying abroad, and they have on their website different links and things to scholarships and fellowships and whatnot that are available to those non-traditional folks. So again, that's a great website where you can get a variety of different possibilities for funding. Studyabroad.com is another website that you can use. You can use it either to help you find a program, so you could go and type in, that I want to go to England in the fall semester, and I'm studying, I'm studying architecture. What opportunities would be available for me, and you'll get a list of possible programs, but it also has a list of possible funding opportunities. Most scholarships and fellowships do advertise with studyabroad.com, so it's definitely a place you want to check out. And then on studyabroad.com, again, you can sort of tell them where you're going, what you're interested in, and then it will give you links to the various funders, scholarships, etc. Another resource that's become a little bit more available to students with the internet coming on is crowdsourcing. There are a number of websites available for that, where you can look for ways to get small amounts of money from people to help fund your study abroad. So there are a lot of resources on the internet that you can use, a lot of aggregate websites. Sometimes it can take a little bit of time to find the scholarships that are appropriate to you, but I have, when I was a study abroad advisor, I have seen students fund an entire $10,000 summer program by looking at these aggregate websites and looking really carefully through them and finding the scholarships that match them. A lot of different scholarships will have special requirements. Maybe you need to be a U.S. citizen, or maybe you need to be studying a specific topic. So those are all things that you'll need to look into as you're using these aggregate websites. But certainly well worth it once you can sort through it and figure out which ones are applicable to you. Okay, my question box is still going crazy, but I will, again, as I said, get to your questions as soon as I finish going through these. So, once you've looked at sort of the aggregate websites, I can tell you there are a number of sort of categories of scholarships that you'll want to understand and start looking at. There are many these are scholarships that are particular to a certain region. I give some examples on the presentation here. DADE and JASO. DADE is for students who want to study in Germany, JASO for students who want to study in Japan. And there are a number of other ones out there like this that are specific for certain countries. So what I would recommend is that you make sure when you go to studyabroadfunding.org or studyabroad.com that you type in sort of what country you want to go to, and you might be able to find scholarships that are really particular to the region that you're hoping to study in. There are also a number of sort of nationally competitive scholarships that you should be aware of and consider applying to. For example, the Gilman Scholarship is a great scholarship that is funded through the Department of State, and that scholarship is really meant to try to get as many diverse people studying abroad as possible. So if the qualifications are that you need to be on a Pell Grant and a U.S. citizen. And then you can apply for their funding to go to either a non-traditional place, or if you're a non-traditional student studying abroad as well. I highly recommend you can go to their website and you'll find all of their eligibility requirements there. It's a very generous award, and I highly recommend applying for that if you find that you're eligible. The other award, the Bourne Awards, is a great award for those of you who are studying languages, critical languages, or hoping to go to a region that is critical to national security. So that would be anybody interested in Africa, Asia, Eastern Europe, Latin America, Middle East. And you're interested in studying a language. This is a very generous scholarship. It can be up to $20,000 for an undergraduate to do a year program abroad, $24,000 for $1,000 for a graduate student, and is one of the more generous awards, and something that you should definitely look into if you're interested in really focusing on a critical language and studying for a long period of time. That's definitely a great award. The next one, the Fulbright. Now, the Fulbright has many different types of awards, so I highly recommend going to their website and really looking through the various awards that are available. They have scholarships, they have programs to help students go teach languages abroad. They have programs that will fund you to study or do research while you're abroad, all kinds of different programs, and in almost all different countries. So I highly recommend for Fulbright that you just take some time to go to their website, look through their resources, and see what kind of funding is available to the countries that you might be interested in. Rotary scholarships are great scholarships that you can get through your local Rotary. So what I recommend for that is to look at your town and see if that is available to you, and what kind of funding might be available. Again, just going to their website and checking the eligibility requirements. CLS is called the Critical Language Scholarships. That's another great program. That is for critical language study. These are summer programs that are fully funded to go study a language critical to the United States. We're thinking Arabic, Chinese, languages like that, and it's fully funded for the summer. So again, another great scholarship. I highly recommend looking at their website if you're thinking of studying a language and thinking of a summer program. Also keep in mind that there are program providers out there. These are companies that run study abroad programs, and many of them have booths at this virtual fair. So you might want to go to them and ask them about their funding opportunities. Many program providers have their own funding, so perhaps you want to think about that when you're looking at programs. If you, for example, are thinking about going to Russia and you're not sure how you're going to fund it, you can use one of those aggregate websites I mentioned to find programs, and then start to look at those programs and what kind of funding might be available through them, because they often have their own funding. And some program providers will have different types of funding, so you might want to look in detail and see maybe there's a program provider that would be best for you. So I would highly recommend looking through different program providers and seeing sort of which ones have scholarships that might be applicable to you. And lastly, I have the diversity scholarships. These, you can go to diversityabroad.com, like I mentioned, and they will have a list of different opportunities. But there's a lot of focus on getting different types of folks the ability to study abroad, and those things you should be on the lookout. For example, I know that Boren has a STEM initiative, so if you're a STEM student and you want to go abroad in the summer, they have an $8,000 award that you can apply to get that funding. So again, there's a lot of different types of scholarships, and you want to really look in detail at where you're studying, what you're studying, and also those national scholarships, and maybe what program provider you're using and what funds they might have available for you. Okay, so I'm on my last slide. For the information about the Institute of International Education. I do want to say before I start looking at the questions that there are a lot of resources out there, and I find that the students who are successful are the ones who are willing to really use those resources. Use the resources on your campus. Use the resources I mentioned, the websites I mentioned, and if you have questions, contact the program providers and ask them about funding. Contact the Gilman Scholarship folks and ask them questions. Contact the Boren folks. The more questions and the more resources you use, the easier I think you'll find it is to be able to find the money that you need to study abroad. Okay, so with that, I'm going to look through and see what kinds of questions there are and what I might be able to answer. I have a question about how can I get full scholarships. So by full scholarships, I would imagine you're looking at scholarships that might fund your full experience abroad. Now, there are a number of programs I already mentioned that would do that. The Fulbright would fund your full experience abroad. The Critical Languages program that I mentioned is another program that would fully fund you to go abroad. I think for this question, the best thing is to sort of use the advice I give in the previous part and start looking at where you want to go, what you want to do, and figuring out sort of what resources might be available and what scholarships you might be eligible for. It takes a little bit of time. You have to look through and see sort of what things you're eligible. Some you need to be on a Pell Grant, others you might need to be studying a specific language or going to a specific country. But like I said, I have seen students who really put the time in be able to find lots of different funding opportunities. I have been receiving, let's see, some students who are non-U.S. citizens. Let me see, I'm going to open this really up. So in terms of international students, it can be a little bit tricky. I think the first place to go is to figure out how financial aid, most institutions don't allow international students to have financial aid, but if your campus does, that's definitely a place to start. The other thing is I've seen students use their own embassies and finding funds through that. So they might want to contact their embassy here in the United States or their embassy at home. Sometimes there are opportunities for international students there. It can be really tough, but even checking through some of the aggregate websites I mentioned and seeing which ones don't have that stipulation that you be a U.S. citizen. So that probably, some of the provider scholarships I know can be applicable to international students. So again, that's another place to look into. Okay. Are there any scholarships that are particular to Russia? Yeah, there are particular Russian scholarships. Again, what I would suggest, I can't really give everybody, tell everybody, oh, here's the scholarship that's definitely going to match you. What I can do is just point you to the resources that you should be using. Like I said, there are a number of providers working in Russia. You might want is one that does funding to Russia. The Critical Language Scholarship, I believe, has funding for Russia. The Bourne Scholarship, the Gilman could fund to Russia. There's lots of different possibilities, given that's a sort of a non-traditional location. So I would, my advice would be to go to studyabroadfunding.org and type in Russia and think about the length of time. Are you looking for summer funding? Are you looking for semester funding? Are you looking for a year abroad? Is this something you want to do after you graduate? So you type in those kinds of different things that you're looking for, and then it should give you an idea of what funding might be applicable to you. Let's see. I don't have any other questions. If there are any other questions, feel free. It looks like we have just a few more minutes before the broadcast ends, and I'm happy to answer whatever I can about funding. But I really do believe that with funding, it's really a matter of taking the time to do the research, understanding the different eligibility requirements for various scholarships. There's a lot of advisors on campuses that are there to help you through these application processes. So if you want to apply for a Fulbright, you'll want to go to your fellowships office. If you want to apply for a Bourne, there's usually a Bourne campus representative. You can find that on the Bourne website, and that's a person that's there just to help you go through the application process and put in a competitive and successful application. I know there are many advisors that are well versed in how to put in good Gilman applications. So really it's important to kind of look at what's around you and use your resources. Short-term programs, 10 days or 2 weeks. For this one, I don't know what type of short-term program it is. If it's through your institution, a lot of summer programs at institutions will have their own funding that's available. Otherwise, a lot of the scholarships do have sort of a limit. I know Bourne, you need to be at least 8 weeks lying in the summer. But it's still worth, I think, looking at some of those aggregate websites and perhaps going to the academic departments like I mentioned on campus. Sometimes there's research money available or money like that. So talking to your academic advisor, if this is a study of a 10-week program, a 10-day rather program to Latin America. Maybe you want to go talk to the Spanish department or Portuguese department. Maybe think about what departments on campus might support that kind of study abroad, and start there. Let's see. Do you have any scholarships for U.S. students to study in Holland? There seems to be very little information about it. Well, what I would suggest, I know there are a couple of providers that are working in Holland, so you might start there, looking at what providers are available and seeing if they have any particular funding through their programs, and that might be a way. If you are if you're eligible for a Gilman, I believe they would fund to go to Holland. Again, going to one of those aggregate websites, putting in your plans and seeing what might be available. I know it's tough and it does take a little bit of time, but it's well worth it. Like I said, I have seen students fund, up to, a $10,000 summer program just by various minor scholarships. So it's definitely worth the work in the end. So I highly recommend that you do it. Again, use the resources. IIE has some really great websites available, iiepassport.com, where you can look for programs and look for funding and see what's applicable to you. I mean, that's really it. Use your resources, research, and find the scholarships that are applicable to you. Well, it looks like I am at this point out of time. I hope that those of you who sat in did find some of the information interesting and helpful. And I wish you all luck and hope that you have an amazing study abroad experience. Thank you.